Hi everyone. If you're ready to take your gerund and infinitive abilities to the expert level, this video will help you with that. But it's really important that you understand gerunds and infinitives first, and then that you know what the passive voice is, as well as how to use past participles with have. So, for example, like with the present perfect, past perfect, or future perfect, okay? So what I'm going to show you is how to do things like this. She's grateful to have traveled. What's the main verb going on here? It looks like there's so many verbs. Is this the verb, be, or is it all this over here? Okay, well actually the main verb is that, and the rest of that is just an infinitive. But since infinitives are verbs too, they don't act like verbs in a sentence, but they come from a verb. This infinitive has been connected with the past participle after the verb have, and I'm going to explain to you how to do that. But what this sentence means is she's grateful to have traveled, meaning in the past at some point she traveled before now. And now she's grateful about that. Over here, she's grateful to have been helped. Again, what's the verb? It seems like there's so many, but really there's only one, and it's this one, the be verb. All this over here is just an infinitive that comes after an adjective. As we know, infinitives can come after adjectives, but this form of the infinitive is combining the present perfect and the passive voice. So I'm going to tell you how to do that as well. But what this means is that she's grateful that in the past she was helped by someone. Okay, so she's focusing on how that happened before now and that someone else helped her, which is why we're using the passive voice. Over here, we say she talked about having traveled. So here's the verb, even though all of this looks like the verb, this is not the verb. This is a gerund that comes after a preposition, because as we know, after prepositions, we use gerunds. But because we're focusing on something that she talked about that happened in the past before now, we can use that gerund in the form with the past participle, which means that we need to use have in the form of the gerund. If this is too complicated, don't worry, we're going to talk about it. Finally, she talked about having been helped. Ooh, okay, so we got the verb, and then over here we have the gerund phrase. It looks like a verb. It is not acting like a verb in this sentence. This is the verb. This is the action. Over here, we have a gerund in the passive voice with the past participle. Okay, so let's talk about how to do that. So the first thing that you need to do is make sure you remember when to use a gerund and an infinitive. As you probably remember, gerunds and infinitives can come as the subject of a sentence, but they can also be the object inside of a sentence. And in this case, they can be the object of all of these things, but we have to remember which can be the object of these different types of words. So let's review. With a verb, you can have a gerund or you can have an infinitive. But the important thing is to remember that certain verbs require an infinitive form after them, and other verbs require a gerund form after them. For example, the verb enjoy. That is a verb that requires a gerund after it. I enjoy swimming. I enjoy writing. I enjoy learning. For an infinitive, one of many verbs that can take an infinitive would be expect. I expect to learn. I expect to understand. I expect to find my way, okay? Now, we'll go back to this, but I also want to remind you that after adjectives, we often use infinitives, okay? But these adjectives are usually adjectives that describe a person's state, okay? Like the way they feel right now, like happy, sad, okay? And it could be the way they feel now or the way they felt at another time in the past or will feel in the future. So words like I'm happy or I'm anxious or I'm lucky, these are adjectives, okay? So after adjectives, we use infinitives, and I'm going to just show you an example would be the word happy. Now, nouns take infinitives. Sometimes they take gerunds after them, but those are exceptions and they're idiomatic expressions, and you can see them in another video. But here, I'm just going to remind you that most of the time, when we're talking about nouns and we want to use a verb form after them, that verb form needs to be in the infinitive form. So, nouns, for example, such as requirement. It is a requirement to pass this class in order to go to the next level. It is a necessity, that's a noun, to learn this information in order to pass the TOEFL, okay? All right, then we know that with prepositions, we always have a gerund after them. Prepositions are words like in, on, over, about, okay? So these are just examples of the many, many, many words of these forms that we can use and then have a gerund or an infinitive after them. So now I'm going to talk about how we can use each of these sets using a gerund or an infinitive in the passive or with a past participle or with both. Okay, so here I'm going to break down the structure for you. If you want to use a verb followed by a gerund, just make sure that it's a verb that can have a gerund as an object, because not all verbs can have a gerund. So enjoy, you can say plus a gerund. So let me just explain that. She enjoys learning. That's it. So we have verb plus a gerund. And you can say she enjoys it every day. She enjoyed learning last year. She will enjoy learning tomorrow. You can use any time frame, but you can take it another level and you can say it like this. She enjoys having learned. Okay, now this is what this video is about, to teach you how to do this. So we have, again, the verb that is important to have, right? In any sentence, you need a verb. And the verb enjoy can be followed by a gerund. In this case, we do have a gerund, but this gerund is also using the word have. And that is because we are trying to express the idea of something happening before now. So we're using a perfect form, right? Like a present perfect or past perfect or future perfect. In this case, it's past, right? So something happened before now. And in order to use a perfect form, you always need to have the verb have plus a past participle. So we have the verb have, it just happens to be in the gerund form, okay? And we also have it being used as the perfect form. So perfects, as a review, is have plus past participle. That's what you need for a perfect form. So we have, okay? And it's in the gerund form. So this is two things happening at once. It's the gerund and it's the first part of the perfect form of this verb. Over here, in order to have the present perfect, the past perfect, future perfect, whatever perfect form you're using, you need have plus the past participle, and that's this, the past participle of the verb learn, okay? So I'm going to, I'm going to point up here, okay? So this is just having learned is the gerund in the perfect form with have and past participle, okay? The next level is where we add the passive to it. So let's look at this. She enjoys having been taught. That means she learned something because someone else taught it to her. So she received the lesson. So in order to express that, we can use passive voice. Passive voice shows that something happened to the subject, not that the subject did something, okay? So she had been taught by someone, okay? So we want to say that she enjoys that. She is happy now about having been taught in the past by somebody else, okay? So we got the word enjoy. We start with our verb. The verb enjoy requires a gerund. So we have our gerund right here, okay? And then after a gerund that is referencing the past, we can use the perfect form. So that means this gerund, it has two parts. It has have, right? Plus the past participle, right? To make it perfect, okay? So have plus past participle. And then over here, the verb that is in this past participle is the verb be, okay? And you need the be verb in order to create the passive voice. So as a review, the passive is be plus past participle. It's always be plus past participle. So here we have be. It is in the past participle already, but that is because it is part of this perfect construction. So we have be, okay? And then we have another past participle to complete the passive voice. So now we have, she enjoys having been taught. Having been is all of this. Been taught is all of that, okay? Now remember, you can only use the gerund form after a verb that takes a gerund or a preposition. So again, we know that prepositions can also take a gerund. So let's look at that. Okay, let's do the same thing with a preposition that comes with a gerund after it. We can have a preposition plus a gerund, that's the basics, right? But that gerund can also be part of a perfect form and then be followed by the passive voice, okay? So we're gonna start here and grow, okay? And as a reminder, the perfect is formed with the verb have and the past participle of any verb, okay? Any form of have plus the past participle of any verb. In this case, have is actually going to be in the gerund form, okay? And then the passive voice is always formed with any form of be plus the past participle. Okay, so we have that. Okay, so let's take a look. She is happy about, there's our preposition, about, passing, and there's our gerund. Basic gerund usage. It could be she is happy about it now, she was happy about it yesterday, she will be happy about it forever, okay? But we can also use the gerund in the perfect form to express that something happened before now, okay? She is happy about, there's our preposition, about, having passed. Having passed. We have gerund form of have. Okay, so here's our gerund. It happens to be in using the verb have because in order to make the perfect, we need a form of have plus the past participle. And here we have the past participle. She is happy about having passed. In the past, she passed her class. And now she's happy about having done that. She's happy about having passed, okay? Here, she is happy about having been passed. Here we have the preposition, okay? We have the gerund, all right? And we have the passive voice, okay? So let me just explain what this means. She is happy about having been passed. It's very different from she is happy about having passed. She is happy about having passed means she did the work and got a good grade all by herself. She is happy about having been passed implies or means that someone helped her pass. Maybe her teacher passed her and she shouldn't have passed. Okay? So this is the passive voice. She just sat there and was passed. She didn't pass by herself. That's what it means. And that's why we're using the passive voice. So again, preposition plus we have the gerund form after a preposition. This happens to be the perfect form, have plus past participle. And then over here we have the passive voice using be plus past participle again. Okay, now let's talk about infinitives and how to do this with infinitives. Okay, so now I'm just going to review all of these ones together when to use the infinitive. Again, we use the infinitive after certain verbs, adjectives, and nouns. So there we have infinitive after those types of words. We have the infinitive after them. And then we can use the perfect and the passive with all of that. And as a review, remember the perfect form is only formed when you have any form of the word have plus the past participle. But this form of the verb have is going to be in the infinitive, okay? So again, have plus past participle of any verb. And then over here, to make the passive voice, we need any form of the verb be, okay? But in this case, the form of the verb be is going to be in the past participle coming from this perfect form of the verb. So we have be plus any other verb in the past participle. So what's happening is these two are combining and these two are combining. Okay, so let me show you. She expected, here's our verb. This verb is the type of verb that takes the infinitive. So she expected to have, there's our infinitive, past. And there's our perfect form. To have is the infinitive, have passed is the perfect form. She expected to have passed. So in the past, she expected to have passed something else before she expected it. Okay. It's very complicated. So if you can't follow that, that's okay. It is complicated, but just go and review past perfect. We use the past perfect to talk about something that happened in the past before something else happened in the past. And that's what's happening here. She is lucky. Here's our adjective. She is lucky to have passed. So here again, infinitive, to have. Past is the past participle of this perfect form. And this perfect form is starting with to have because we need that in infinitive form after an adjective. She is lucky to have passed. Right now, she is lucky because in the past, before now, she passed something. Okay? Now, here we're saying it was a requirement. Here's the noun. It was a requirement, okay, to have passed. Remember, after nouns, we can use infinitive. So here we have the infinitive of the word have, okay? And then have plus past participle is the perfect form over there. So we have it was a requirement to have passed. So in the past, there was a requirement to have passed a class in order to enter the other one or something. So we have something that happened in the past before something else happened in the past, okay? So that's how you use it in the active voice. If you want to throw the passive voice into there, you can, but you need to make sure that it makes sense. In this case, we can easily add the passive voice to these two sentences, and I can say, she expected to have been passed. If you add been in there, it's completely grammatical, but the meaning changes completely. It goes from her doing the work to pass to now someone passing her. So she expected to have been passed. Here we have the infinitive. Here we have the perfect form. And here we have the passive. Okay? Infinitive, perfect, passive. Okay? Over here, she is lucky to have been passed, you can say. Okay? That means that someone passed her. She didn't pass by herself. Remember, passive voice means that somebody does something to you or for you. So she is lucky to have, there's our infinitive. Have been is our perfect form. Been passed is our passive, and they're all mixed together. Finally, down here, you can't make this passive voice. It was a requirement to have been passed. Okay, it's grammatical, but it doesn't really make sense because how can it be a requirement that someone else pass you? Usually, there's requirements to pass something and do it by yourself, not for someone else to do it for you. So we can change the verb and we can say taught. We can say it was a requirement to have been taught. Oops. It was a requirement to have been taught about gerunds and infinitives, for example. Okay, so we'll have the infinitive plus the perfect form plus the passive form right there. Okay, now this is very complicated, but it's okay. If you understand perfect forms, passive forms, gerunds, and infinitives, you will start using these forms automatically as long as you're reading and talking to people. It'll just start coming out now that you understand how it's formed, okay? So practice it yourself. You will make mistakes. You need to make those mistakes in order to catch yourself and go back and reevaluate what you need to do. And then the more you practice, the more you will be able to do this. This is a really advanced expert level, and I hope you're able to unlock it very soon. All right. Hope you enjoyed that. Bye-bye.